Thank you very much, and towards the end of a long evening I promise to be very, very brief. That should make you all very happy. Yeah. No? Okay. No effect at all. First of all, to follow Kika is an honour and a pleasure, but also sad because immediately one remembers Corin and all the fantastic work that he did. And I've never forgotten the many brilliant performances he put on the stage and on film, and support that he gave to all kinds of organisations, popular or unpopular, Dale Farm Occupation and so many others. Corin was always prepared to be there. And I've never forgotten one Sunday evening, he gave up a whole Sunday evening, which for a working actor is a very precious day, in order to read De Profundius at the Union Chapel in Islington in honour of and support for refugee and immigration causes. And I thought, what a fantastic evening, what a pleasure it was to hear somebody of such brilliance and skill reading such a wonderful work. Kika, thank you very much for what you said, and sorrow is with you for always for Corin and all he did for us. Thank you. Jenny can't be here tonight and because she's not well, and she wanted to refer to a message from Yusuf El-Halou, a Palestinian from Gaza. I won't read it all, but I'll just read some of it. As the third anniversary of Israel's 22-day all-out offensive on Gaza draws near, Israel has escalated its air and ground attacks on the coastal seaside territory that has been under ongoing siege for 5 years. Gaza's 1.6 million people, who have been subject to almost daily Israeli military attack, will not raise the white flag. We, the indigenous people of Palestine, will remain resilient in the face of oppression. We're glad for all the efforts made by international pro-Palestinian peace and human rights activists. We know that we are not alone in our struggle for justice. Our land has been occupied since 1948. Although we've been unable to return or even visit our land, we say today we will not forget, and we will teach the love of our homeland to our children. We're dismayed by the apathy of the so-called international community, including the United Nations, which has not made any serious effort to force Israel to implement UN resolutions and international law and to end its prolonged occupation and siege. We need our liberty. We need to be free and have a normal, decent life. I would like to thank you for listening to my words. We are proud of you. Please keep up the good work. I'm telling you, every one of you can make a difference. Raise awareness, double your effort for the sake of justice everywhere, because injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Yusuf El-Halou from Gaza. As I came in, Andy was speaking, and I'd just come from a very nice event. We were making a presentation, a surprise presentation to the great Tony Benn for all his works, and Betty was one of those that spoke. Betty Hunter was one of those that spoke, and she reminded us that when Tony first became involved, Palestine Solidarity Campaign in the 80s, there were barely 300 registered supporters, and to raise Palestine in Parliament, and I can attest to this, was extremely lonely and extremely unpopular to do. We've come an awful long way since then, in the sense of the marches, the meetings, the demonstrations and the solidarity. And whilst there is enormous frustration, all of us in solidarity are always frustrated. We want to do more, we want to see more changes, we want things to go more quickly. It makes a huge difference to people stuck in Gaza, stuck behind checkpoints in the West Bank or stuck in refugee camps, that people elsewhere are raising the flag of injustice and raising the awareness of Palestine. And Britain has a particular responsibility in this, and we can't shy away from that. History is very badly taught in our schools, and I'd never heard of the Balfour Declaration while I was at school. I heard of it much later on, as indeed the rest of you did. And if nothing else, I would like this country to start teaching world history and the history of European colonisation and imperialism as a basic primer for all our children. And there was a group of firefighters from Jenin who were visiting this country last year, the year before, and they were hosted by the Fire Brigades Union in Scotland, and they, at the end of their visit, they came to London, and one of the items on their itinerary was to have a tour of Parliament. And so I gave them my own version of the history of the British Parliament. It's what I term, you were there, the anti-imperialist tour of Parliament, and I explained to them about the Barons and the House of Lords and the House of Commons and the suffragettes and the English Civil War and the Act of Union with Scotland and the dishonesty that went with it. I told them an awful lot, actually. I hope it was all translated. Anyway, so at the end of visiting the House of Commons chamber, we come into the central lobby, or the members' lobby rather, and they said, well, who are these people and these statues here? So I pointed to Churchill, they knew about him. I pointed to Lloyd George, and they knew a bit about him, not too much. I pointed to Mr. Attlee, and they knew a bit about him. There's a statue of a woman by the door that I have difficulty in describing, but you'll probably know her as Margaret Thatcher. But I didn't want to go into too much detail about that. And to be quite honest, they weren't that bothered about Margaret Thatcher. And then they said, and who's that over there? I hadn't actually looked before, and I looked across, and it was Balfour. So I said, that's Balfour. And they said, which Balfour? I said, well, the one that did the declaration. They said, can we tear it down now? They wanted to just take it away. They had that sense of history. We have a responsibility. The Balfour Declaration was an ultimate act of total dishonesty to both Palestinian and Jewish people seeking some place of safety in the world. Absolute act of dishonesty, and that act of dishonesty has been played out ever since. And then you look at all the things that have happened since then. Nakba in 1948, the Six-Day War, the huge numbers of people in refugee camps, all the other wars that have taken place, the construction of the wall, the imprisonment, the denial of rights, the denial of water, the denial of livelihood, the denial of travel, the denial of living, the imprisonment of a whole people. And all this is apparently done somehow or other in the name of liberty. And so when we meet because we're angry. We meet because we want to see some change. We meet because we want to see something different. And I've had the good fortune to visit the West Bank and Gaza on many occasions, and I always come back more angry than the time I came back before. I always come back more determined than the time before to see something done about it. And over the past 3 years, I've had the privilege of meeting people in refugee camps in Syria, in Lebanon, and in many other areas across the whole region. There are people who now have grandchildren living in those refugee camps who can remember every last detail of the village they were driven out of on what is now Israel. They were driven into exile, driven into the horrors of living in refugee camps forevermore. They intend, expect, and are determined and will have the right of return to the land that they were driven from in the first place. I just think we've got to understand the historical injustice that is going on. Why are the people of Gaza so poor? Why are the people of Gaza largely unemployed? Why are they dependent on food being brought in by the UN or the small amount that's allowed through the checkpoints? Why are they dependent on the UN to provide education? Why are they dependent on tunnels to bring through the other things that one needs to sustain life? Why are the people of the West Bank finding it so difficult to travel anywhere? Why are those refugees in Lebanon and Syria and other places unable to travel anywhere? Imprisoned, 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 in unity with them, in unity with humanity, and in determination of peace. We have to stand up against a nuclear-armed power called Israel. We have to stand up against their occupation. We have to stand up for the rights of Palestinian people. We meet here, we carry a message. We demonstrate on the streets of London, we carry a message. We build a PSC, we carry a message. And I've never forgotten that great occasion when, during the siege of Gaza, during Operation Cast Lead, 3 years ago, 200,000 people marched on the streets of London 25 years ago, we'd have been lucky to get 200 people on a march. That is how far the solidarity has come. That is how much further the solidarity is going to go, and will carry on and on forever until the Palestinian people are free. Thank you very much.